Hi there, my name is Kendrick, and welcome to another ENFP male interview. Today, I have an awesome panel of the INTJ, ENTJ, ISFP, and ESFP. So, if I can get you guys all to introduce yourself, starting with let's start with Josh because he's a blaster. Go for it, man.
Yeah. My name is Joshua. I am a INTJ, so I'm NITE. Blast, play, consume, sleep, double feminine, representing double femmes. Yeah. So that's about it. Yeah.
All right, next, let's go with Julien.
Julien.
Hi, I'm Julien. I'm an ISFP. I'm an MF audio jumper, so that's FINI, sleep, consume, blast. And happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you again, man. Let's go with Alan next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alan, ENTJ, double M, blast, last, play, consume, sleep. And I don't really follow the OPS community too much anymore, so I'm looking forward to a bit of a refresher on what everything is. Probably the main thing I'm doing these days is once a year I redo the typing questions just as a curiosity piece. I'm up to my third year in January, February.
All right, cool to see you again, man. Like you were like in my first 5 interviews, so it's good to meet this again. Abby, you're the last one.
Hey everyone, I'm an ESFP, SETE, so not the standard ESFP, play, consume, sleep, blast, and visual.
Cool, yeah, you're like I remember when I interviewed Abby, she didn't want to be an ESFP because she wanted to be an INFJ because INFJs were more rare. But you know,
cooler.
But you're actually the rarest sexual modality type, so like there's not many visuals, right? So
it's not necessarily about the rarity piece. It's like nobody. ESFPs are people that you want to like hate and
really?
Yeah.
I don't hate any ESFPs.
That's funny because I see it as opposites. So I type myself as an ESFP and I thought they're super cool. I'm like, yeah, I want to be an ESFP. And then so me and her's doing the flip. Yeah, that's funny.
All right, guys. Since we are, I see Josh's dog in the back. We're here now. I hear some noise. I'm gonna mute Julien for now.
It's just I think it's Julien's maybe.
Yeah, I'll mute him for now. Okay. So, anyways, guys, so let's start with your NI. So, Josh, let's go pass it on to you first. You are the lead NI guy here, masculine NI. How do you experience your NI? And after you're done, just pass it to someone next.
Okay. I think of my NI is the gift and curse. So I think of it as I think when people have their lead function, they're usually pretty good at it, especially if it's masculine. But so I find people similar. I have an identical twin. He's lead NI as well. And he is so spot on with his NI about 75-80% of the time. But when he is off, he is way off. So I'm assuming that's the same for me. So that's my guess. But I think of my NI is the function it's used is for looking into the future. And because I'm TE, I'm a thinker, where I want to avoid pain by nature. So I think of it as constantly, unconsciously or consciously trying to create a pleasant future, no matter what's coming up, and then trying to avoid any pain. So I think that's its main job. And I think it works pretty well if that's what I want to use it for. And yeah, I'd say that's pretty much it. I think that's his main goal. But the thing is I'm always can jump to conclusions always, but I think I'm right about 75-80% of the time, but 20% of the time I'm probably way off. That's just my guess subjectively, by the way. So who freaking knows? I could be off 80% of the time, but that's what it seems like. So, and I will pass the hot potato to my main man, Julien. Oh, you're on mute, my dude.
There you go.
Hello. I've been unmuted. Shackled.
Yeah,
okay. So I'm done with my NI. I see my NI as also kind of like a double-edged sword in the sense that it's tied mostly to my sleep. And so it's kind of like this abstract process of trying to process who I am in the future. Like who am I going to become? What is my life path? Where am I going? But it's kind of circular in which I just keep coming back and forth around in this circle, because as I was saying earlier to Kendrick off the record, that it's feminine NI. And so I forget about the concepts, and it's feminine logic, TE. So I forget about the logic. And then I just end up going over the same things over and over again. But at the same time, you know, it's also tied to my desire for routine, for doing kind of going to the same things over and over again, to wanting to build up one thing, even though it's balanced with the SE, so I can go. So I have a desire to try out new things as well, and kind of back and forth. But I mean, because it's in the middle, I feel like it's sort of balanced, more of a tool. It doesn't really get in my way, but yeah, sometimes I feel like it's kind of slowing me down, because I'm overworking the hypothetical me in the future rather than experiencing in the now, or trying to work towards something for the future. But I mean, for the most part, it's all right. And I'll pass it to Alan. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I suppose I find it a little bit hard to answer this question, because I'm not sure, I probably don't prescribe to functions operating in singularity. I much prefer the compounding effect with animals, so I'll speak in that term. So I've got double feminine hobby sleep. And in that regard, I would say that when I'm confronted with a challenging problem that's got many solutions and too many limiting factors, I can find it extremely stressful. There's a need to go through and test all those permutations. I can really, I'm not using those words specifically to align with double F and testing. It's because when those are the type of things that used to keep me up at night. I've just gone through all that options analysis. But the speaking in double-edged sword terms, I'd say the benefit there is by the time I reach a conclusion, it's extremely thorough. And so I suppose that's one of the rewarding elements of being double F. By the time you commit to something, you know that it's the choice for you at that moment. In regards to blast, the sleep before blast, I can definitely see that. If I even with something today that I need to do, my partner was like, "Oh, I'll get some people that are coming over to give you a hand," and I'd rather not. I'd rather do it by myself, because I can find it extremely challenging to explain people how to do things if I'm not certain how to do it myself. And with that double feminine sleep, if I haven't experienced that moment before and don't have some sort of baseline, it's extremely hard for me to pull together the concepts to explain to something. I find it very hard to explain things step by step. I'm very concept driven. So that's me, and that leaves Abby.
Yeah, so I experienced my NI like the really annoying parent that tells you to look both ways when you cross the street. Or like, you know, put on a jacket because it's cold. It's like, yeah, I'll be fine. Like, don't worry about it. Like, just let me live my life. But at the same time, it is masculine. So I feel like it gives me a lot of direction and where I need to be as long as I listen to it. Yeah, I'm done.
That's last right there.
Yeah.
Y'all are also gave me a lot of time to think about it in a very concise statement. So
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. You got double masculine NT blast also. So it's kind of interesting. I've interviewed all of you before, and I don't know where Julien went. It seems like he teleported. But anyway, so I think Alan's kind of interesting because he's lead ST, right? He's double masculine. So when I first interviewed him, he looks like a soldier kind of like look, and now he looks like a hippie. So it's like, he's swinging to that NF. And in the class recently, they're talking about like the double feminine swing. So I thought I was when I'm looking at Alan, I'm like, oh, he's doing that hippie swing, the double feminine NF swing. Okay, cool guys. So let's talk about the opposite of NI. Let's talk about your SE now, your extroverted sensing. Why don't we start with Alan first, because he has the masculine extroverted sensing. Like all of you guys have no, that's not true. Julien also has masculine extroverted sensing. So Alan, go for it, man. Take the floor.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've probably gained a better appreciation for these functions from seeing my kids grow. So I've got a daughter who's definitely an intuitive. Don't know between NT and F, probably NT, but my son, I'm almost dead certain he's a ESTP, and just see, and double M. And seeing his physicality approach to things has kind of given me an appreciation for how I approach it, because it's very similar, but I don't really notice it in myself until I've seen somebody else do it. So what am I actually talking about here? Because I'm babbling a bunch of things. I suppose this lines up with what I was saying before, where it can be hard for me to interpret a concept until I've actually done it. But done means by doing. So if I take when I was like learning how to play squash, for example, some people can listen very well. I can hear, but it means nothing to me. I actually need to do the body movement, that whole kinesthetic thing. You know, I would watch videos, but once again, it was to understand the movement, the motion, and that's what would be required for me to connect. Even with motorsport being the same, I can read a lot of concepts and it makes sense at a superficial level, but nothing actually sticks and becomes something that I understand the fundamentals of until I've actually gone through and practiced it physically. So instead of, we'll go Abby next.
Right. I was thinking, no, I'm kidding. SE is hard for me to talk about because it feels like it's just how I exist, right? But if I were to put it into some kind of words, I would imagine it's kind of like a ninja submarine radar thing where you're like scanning your environment, but because it's feminine, there's a little bit of like movement around with it. And before, when I didn't notice that much about SE in terms of my life, I would say that like the world was attacking me, but now it feels like it's more an inspiring thing because I think inherent in SE is this idea that the world is yours. Like whatever happens in the moment, you got this. Like you're okay. You're going to be fine. So it's a very optimistic function, I think, in my experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Okay. All right. You know, I think of ST, my sensory, I think of it as, I actually love it. So that's a function I really enjoy. I think of it in two ways. I think of it as more experiences, which is always exciting, especially if I was afraid to jump into it, you know, or whatever. But the main thing I like about it is it really balances my observations. So I see it as kind of the most important piece of an observation for me. So I can't settle on an observation until I check with the sensory. And, you know, even then, I mean, let's look, like life is just so much perception. I mean, how much of it is actually real that we're actually seeing? Now I sound like a NF hippie, but you know, I think that it's a way to at least kind of get you to a holding spot of an observation. I never fully settle on observations anymore. So everything's just always like, I don't know, like maybe this is my best guess, but it does bring balance to the observations for me. So for me, I naturally can just jump to the conclusions of things, but I don't ever feel comfortable there until I have some sensory. So it's a good starting place for me to find more information through the sensory, if that makes sense. So I'll start with the idea, what I think something is, and then I get excited about the sensory because I can find more information. And then once I get more of that, then I can have a more balanced perspective of observation. So
before we go to Julien, I have a question for Josh and Abby. With so you guys have feminine extrovert sensing, so you guys are a little bit different from Julien and Alan. Double masculine with extrovert sensing, that's pretty straightforward from what I can see, especially how Alan described it. It was very clear. So you guys have feminine extrovert sensing. I'm curious, especially with Josh, but Abby as well. Josh, you work in the fitness industry. You own a fitness business. You are a bodybuilder. You compete in bodybuilding. One of the stereotype with feminine extrovert sensing is that you are bad at controlling the physical, but then you lift weights. And I don't know about Abby's fitness routine or if she works out or not, but you can answer that after as well. Abby, I'm curious. So can you guys talk about your feminine extrovert sensing? Like what's going on there with like the movement? Like, do you guys have trouble having the perfect form for exercises or whatnot? And Yeah.
So in my experience, it depends on if it's in my NIFI box. Okay. So if it's picking up something like a sport I've never played, yeah, extremely uncomfortable for a minute. Well, kind of. Now, I don't know if this matters, but I do have double activated sensory SE. So when I see my sensory compared to my twin brothers, it's night and day. Okay. So he is extremely into the, we're both very creative, but he's very into he's like musician and not sports, where I've been a musician, and I play sports. I'm better at music than sports, but so to answer your question, I don't find it hard at all with bodybuilding or things like that, but maybe that's because I'm seeing it from an NT perspective of conceptual of like, I'm seeing the details of like the sensory. It's almost like the sensory slowed down enough where I can see every minute little part. And so when I'm seeing somebody with their form or thinking about bodybuilding for myself, I understand conceptually, well, when I used to bodybuild, the guns is kind of, on the shelf recently. Okay, just FYI. All right. But when I used to bodybuild heavy, I would get so much into the details of the every little piece of the sensory. And to me, that was part of the fun. It was like how much now in retrospect, I'm like, figuring out how many minute details I can find in the sensory just to create the overall NI concept of the shapes I want to create in somebody or myself or things like that. I don't know if that makes sense, if that's sounding Chinese to some, if it's making sense, but if it's too intuitive, I guess. But the sensory gives me opportunity. It's part of the game. So it's like, the more I keep discovering, the funner the game is, because I'm finding more little tidbits of information to throw toward my NI to create the best overall picture that I can. Does that make sense?
It does. I have a follow-up question, but I want to hear Abby's feminine extrovert sensing first.
Oh, this is going to be Clark. I am an award-winning and super, super proud couch potato. The height of my career is when I had a mini fridge beside my bed and I did not get up. That was the highlight of my life. I don't do any sports. I don't work out. I hardly walk. Yeah, that's it. I don't know anything about that.
Okay, so my follow-up question for you guys, I don't know if this is true or not. So I noticed that, a lot of INTJs or people with feminine extrovert sensing, they're scared of chaos that's coming from the sensory. Are you guys terrified of a projectile coming your way? Like, let's say someone throws a football at you or like a volleyball. Alan probably catch it no problem, and he'll throw it back at you even harder. But like, what about you guys, Josh and Abby? Like, if someone throws like a basketball at you, a football, like a projectile's coming your way, how would you react? At fast speed, with a feminine sensory.
I would say by nature, yes, uncomfortable, but it also depends on my state. So, these days, I'm just way more chill. And so because of that, nothing scares me as much because I'm not as much of an impulsive state. Does that make sense? But if you want to know my core true nature, it's uncomfortable until I do it a lot. So if someone threw it at me, I played sports, so it's not that uncomfortable, but sensory coming fast, if it's too much for if I feel like it's unfamiliar or it's too much to process, then yes, that's overwhelming. But I would say for me, what's way more overwhelming, I don't know if you call this sensory, but emotional chaos is way more scary than chaos for me. Emotional chaos coming from others being a thinker.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. Abby, what about you with the football or the basketball being thrown at your way?
So before we started, you were saying how you've never seen my masculine TE. Throw something at me and it'll come out. Like, it will. No, I'm kidding. It's just, yeah, it scares me. Mostly with bugs. Really, like, because why do they have more than two legs? Like, why do you need more than two legs? I don't understand that. It makes no sense, and therefore you're gross, and please don't come at me. But that's basically it. Usually I have a pretty good radar for things coming near me that I don't want. Nobody's ever really thrown things at me though. So
Bugs I relate to, by the way. Yeah, bugs
really?
creep me out. Oh, insects creep me out. Ugh.
Yeah. And they have so many like sides to their eyes. Like, why? I don't.
Yeah.
Like, why are they like that? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, like grasshoppers or something. Like, I don't want to hold a grasshopper. That'll freak me out.
Yeah.
Problem is, the insects are thinking the same thing about you.
Yeah, I know.
Probably.
They're like, yeah.
Stay away from each other. I don't want to kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah. We could go our own ways.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, so I want to hear Julien next, but I also want to hear what Julien and Alan have to say about like the whole bugs thing, because like that's like an observer issue, right? So curious to hear your take on that. So go for it, Julien.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm pretty chill with bugs, to be honest. Like I used to catch grasshoppers when I was a kid, and like snakes and things like that. It'd just be like a fun thing to do, you know. They're quick, and it takes some patience and skill to catch them. So you go and catch them, and I don't know. I mean, I don't really like spiders, but only if they get too big. Like a small spider, that's fine. A harmless looking spider, that's fine. But when it gets to a certain size, like me and you can't. This room ain't big enough for the two of us, and I will try to kill it. And cockroaches as well. When I was in Nepal, I lived in this hostel, and like I had this cockroach infestation, which probably was my fault, to be honest. I think that I caused it. But so there's all these cockroaches, and I spent a sleepless night going around the room killing all of them, because like there weren't enough nooks and crannies for them to hide in. It was like a very spare room, and so yeah, I killed all of them in all their little nooks and crannies. And I don't know if that makes me a bad person or not, but it's like really gross ones, I guess. I don't really want to abide them, but for the most part, it's like insects, and they're just doing their thing. They're hanging out. They can be cute, I guess, just not close up.
Man, you nasty. I'm just playing.
I would eat a bug. Man.
Don't travel with Julien.
Yeah. Pet grasshoppers and stuff. Dude, you would eat a grasshopper?
It would have to be like coated in honey. But yeah, I'd eat it.
Oh. Like the crickets they sell, you know, like in Vegas and stuff.
I never had that, but like in Mexico, they make this powder of crickets with spices, and I would get down on that. Like, I got no problem with that being the future.
See, that's kind of G, man.
Like,
I think of that, like that show. What's that show? Do you guys ever watch that show? What? No, it's like Survivor, but it's the new one. Alive, or it's one word. Alone.
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, you're set up for something like that, bro. Not me. Yeah. You'd be alone in the wilderness with all these cockroaches and all these gross bugs and stuff crawling all over you. You'd be all right, bro. I'd be freaking having an anxiety attack.
It just reminds me of the Dave Chappelle sketch where Tyrone Biggums goes on Fear Factor.
Yes.
He's like, you know, like a horse's dick or something. He's like,
gotta give you wings.
Yeah, and he's like lying in the bed of bugs, and he's like reading the news. He's like,
yes.
Matthew.
That's you, bro. That's hilarious.
Dave Chappelle's an INTJ also, right?
Is he?
Yeah, he's an INTJ.
Yeah, Dave Chappelle.
Oh, that looks right. That sounds right.
He's your type, man. He's blast play continuously.
Oh, snap. Are you serious?
I think he's MF, though. He's MF. So
he's almost my type twin. He's like Raja's type twin.
Yeah.
Is he Raja's type twin?
Yeah, Raja. He's a Raja.
Yeah.
Oh, snap. That's cool. No wonder I like him. We kind of look alike. Not really, but, you know, like the little IJ head.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Cool.
Julien, what about your extrovert sensing, man? You're
Yeah, I was gonna get in. So I agree with a lot of what people said here, especially Alan, when it comes to like physically doing something. Someone can explain something to me and I can conceptualize it, but I won't remember it until I've done it. And when I do it, then it's locked into like muscle memory and it's good. But otherwise, like I'll just forget it. I have to do something physically to really integrate it into myself. And I like the kind of the funny thing is, because it's like I'm saviour NI and not SE, but I have SE in there. It's like I don't seek out new things, new experiences, or new sports or anything like that. But when I do, I'm usually pretty good at it and I love it. And so like it becomes part of my box. When I try it out, like rock climbing. I'm like, I resisted it for ages, and my girlfriend was going. I'm like, oh, fine, I'll try this bouldering gym. and I loved it. And then I just kept going into it and things like that. And I guess it's balanced with the NI, where it's kind of like, there's this concept, but it needs to be factually backed up. You know, I can't just throw out a concept that's too out there. I need to have the evidence to back it up. And I lean more on factual data than abstract concepts, no matter how solid a concept is. It's like, well, the sensory is easier to prove in reality with other people, because it's like, we're using our senses here. We can all agree that that is that. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of us. As for the concept, it's personal. And it's like, I don't know how to get people on board with this concept without showing them some kind of physical proof.
Yeah. I relate to a lot of what he just said, especially like if something comes into your box, like you're not looking for the new as much, but when it does come, I'll look a little bit. But when it comes, I fall in love with it and I get obsessed with it. I milk it for what it's worth, and then I move on to the next.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll creep up to the box later on, later on. So we're gonna talk about the FI last, because that's the one that everyone starts talking about their identity. I think that's gonna be the big one. So let's go.
That's a therapy session.
Yeah, it's gonna be a therapy session, exactly. So get your Kleenex out and But anyway, so let's start with the TE first, and then we're gonna go jump to FI next. Okay, we're trying to do like the opposite spectrums here. So I think Alan's gone first already, and Josh has gone first. So maybe let's go with Julien. We'll put you in the spot now. TE, this is your bottom function for an ISFP. Talk about your feminine extrovert thinking here.
Okay, so I'm glad that I have TE, I think, as a function in general, but it's hard, man. Like, automatically, I don't feel like I have a good, strong handle on logic or doing things logically. But I think because it's on the spectrum, as I go through life, as I like gather experiences and learn from other people, it's like I can pick up all these different tools that other people manage to figure out better than I could have figured out. And it's kind of like, oh, I have this boost ahead. Maybe I have TE last and my natural logic is pretty garbage, but because I know this lead TE or this savior TE, and they taught me their trick for doing something with logic, now I can incorporate that, and I've taken that logic in for myself. But because it's feminine, as I was mentioning earlier, I don't remember these things very well. Like if I figure something out, if I figure out something logically, chances are I'll forget about it in a couple of weeks or even a day, which is why the same with the intuition. So like when it comes to NT conceptualizing something logically, it doesn't last in my brain and it just disappears. And I feel like I keep going over the same ground over and over again. And I don't know, it's been a challenge because with the savior FI, it's so strong. It's like, I just want to do what I want to do, but I know that that's not the best way to go about. And I know that to get along in this world and to really be a full person, which, the IP desire is to be like this complete perfect person or whatever, you need to be able to access all these functions. And so striving towards more TE, it's like, I don't really understand, how do I do TE? Like, how do I focus on the tribe more? And to me, it's been kind of just like trying to spend a little bit of time every day, like the 3 wheelbarrow tasks that Dave and Shan talk about, basically choosing 3 tasks for the day to accomplish. I'll try to make one of those not about me and try to make it about my girlfriend or somebody else. Usually it's just my girlfriend because she's like the only one in my tribe right now in New Zealand. I don't have any friends in this city. We've been in lockdown ever since I've been here, and my family's back home. And so, I call them, but I can't really do much for them from over here. Or maybe I could, and I just don't know, and I'm creating excuses. But in any case, it feels like this very baby function that I try to feed energy into, but I don't really know what I'm doing, and I can't remember what I figured out. So it's kind of like, it feels like a baby, It feels like I'm trying to nurture it, but you can't expect it to do a lot of stuff. It's like feeding it milk or like little bits of gravy or whatever, and I want it to be better, but it's so young. It takes a long time to develop in my mind, at least. So I feel like I'm talking in extreme demon state. So there it is. That's TE for me.
Who do you want to go next, Julien?
Oh, I want to hear Josh's TE on this, being the blaster.
Yeah. All right. So I think when I think of TE, I think just like the best, like it's the shiz. So the way I see my TE is I think of it as NTE. So what I'm saying is because I'm NT, I like to figure things out. And what I like to figure out is a million tools to use in my tool belt. So I just stack it up. I've noticed this recently is like, whenever there's anything that I'm doing for the first time, my brain's already figuring out the best, quickest, simplest, easiest, or most enjoyable way, whatever it is. It's just figuring it out. It's an autopilot thing. And so with my TE, it's hard to think about it without thinking how I'm trying to figure something out. But then when I figure it out, I love figuring things out. That's my shiz, NT, right? But when I figure it out, I like the longest tool belt of everything possible. So any journey I'm on, whether it's fitness or whether it's psychotherapy or cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever, I have a laundry list of tools for you. So if someone loves information and they need tools, practical tools that work in reality, by the way, that's the only ones I value, okay? If they love information and love freaking tools, the how-to stuff, I got you. Like, I'm your guy. Like, you could just live with me and just drink it up, you know, like I'll give you so much goodness, man. And so to me, I think what it's doing is it's also serving my NI because it makes me feel prepared. So no matter what happens in my life, I have a tool for it. You see what I'm saying? So I think it's like the N and T are just like so like married, where it's like the T's working for the N's working for the T, but they're just in a union, and it's a beautiful union. So yeah, so in other words, man, when it comes to tools, I have a whole tool shed for everything I'm experiencing, everything I'm into. I mean, and then what's cool is then I'll go back to my tool shed and then I'll narrow it down to the top three, the three that matter. If I got like 100 tools, it's like, okay, well, these are the best three. And then that's when I feel like I'm ready to help or teach someone. It's like, I got 3 tools for you. Whether you go through this, then here's 3 options. Whether you're going through this, you got 3 options. You're going through this pain or whatever, I got 3 options for you. And I have a solution for mostly anything. Yeah, I never find myself not with the tool in any solution. I mean, not having a solution via a tool for any situation someone can be in, whether it's mental or physical. I got you.
All right, who's next, Josh?
Oh, hot potato goes to Abby.
Yeah, I think I related a lot to that, except it's not as organized. My process is not as organized. I don't have a list of tools. It just comes to me in the moment. I think TE is my favorite function that I have.
Yeah, it's dope.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a visionary. I'm not a thought leader, but I can get shit done. And I think a lot of that goes towards TE. And I think my life is easier because that comes naturally, because having that solution to every problem, as Josh says, helps to kind of move you along, even if you're last, right? Kind of do things. Yeah.
Oh.
Your T is also masculine. So Julien earlier was saying how, when he figures things out, he forgets about it all the time. Do you tend to forget things that you figured out, or you have like really good memory because it's masculine?
Yeah, I don't tend to forget. I don't know. I don't track that very much, but I don't remember forgetting something that I figured out before. Usually if I get it, I get it. And then it works the same flip side. If I don't get it, then I don't get it, Yeah.
Yeah, it's also interesting that you said that you are not a visionary, but you can get shit done. So that's the ST, right? But the NT, I guess, is lacking. But the funny thing is your NT is double masculine. Your NT is actually the most like confident, supposedly, if you used it compared to even Josh, who's the blaster master here,
The blaster master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about Alan? Alan, you and Abby are the exact same like animal stack. So you're both gonna be like getting shit done kind of people. So can you talk about your TE there a bit? Whether that be or
before that, I'm enjoying some of the stereotypes that are coming out. Abby's blast last, in contrast from Josh, is very pronounced. But I just wanted to say one thing first about Julien. I've really appreciated the way he communicates specifically, because I feel it matches a lot of the dialogue, my internal dialogue, that I speak to myself, but really struggle to communicate, especially on the FI terms. I just love the way before you were talking about the grasshoppers and the challenge that it presented, and being so open about it and carefree. And that's something that I'm still encouraging myself to take on. So it's motivating to see someone do that so naturally. I would describe it like, you don't know me, so what I'm talking probably doesn't have any relation. I'm just saying that's my own thoughts. But it's the way I'd compare it is almost the whiskey terms. You know, when you're speaking that NF, or what I consider NF, it's almost like you're the 21-year-old whiskey top shelf, and I'm the cheap bottom shelf stuff.
You're the Kentucky Deluxe.
But still all whiskey. So I've really appreciated seeing that. It's but look, as for the TE, it's quite hard for me to talk about because I don't know if I really know. Well, I don't know if I appreciate it in the same terms everyone else is talking about. I mean, if I go off the stereotype OPS that I was aware of back in the day, it was what people's reasons or whatnot. So when I'm hearing about tools, I get a bit confused. But what I will say is, instead of speaking about T from my own perspective, I'll speak about it how people that I work with have described me. And so what I've built a reputation for around my colleagues is being someone that has integrity, so that FI component, and is willing to push back on the people that are in power and control for consistency and raising hard questions. And I've been known for that, to the point where people will come to me as a spokesperson for them. So that's how I would describe it.
I like your EJ spin to it, Alan. Like, you're the spokesperson for the tribe, you know, especially for us weakling feminine TE. Like we want to say something, but we're too scared or something. So we put the masculine.
I need that. I need that kind of person in my life. The spokesperson.
Just talk.
I go to them. I'm like, please help.
Can you say it for me?
The other weird thing that I've learned in the past couple of years is that regardless of the blast last, in a professional environment, people consider me an extremely effective communicator, which was quite surprising. I find myself to be someone that can be uncertain of what I'm talking about. So it's always interesting how you contrast yourself to how other people view you. And so when answering these questions, it's not because of the EJ flavor. I just find that you can hold yourself to whatever bar you want, but in the end, also, it is important how others perceive you.
Well, you are a great communicator, man. You say things really clear. You're just really easy to understand. It's very clear and clean cut. Are you, but I'm curious because it doesn't have it on here. Are you TENI?
No, I'm TESE.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's why it's clear. Because the sensory, yeah, that makes more sense. But yeah, you communicate very well, man. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're fun to listen to. I mean, all you guys are fun to listen to.
Oh,
that's me being Pharisees. Yeah, Pharisees. Well, I have a personal relationship with Julien. That's my voice. So I love hearing his. And to me, he's not that NF-y for an NF. You know, he's very clear. It's not like hearing Byron Katie or someone where you're like, what planet are you talking about? Which I love Byron Katie, but you know. There you go.
That's to do with the impersonal nature of the SE and the TE. So it's ST, but it's all on the spectrum, kind of extroverted functions, where it's like clarity and logic, but we're using it outside of ourselves, kind of like we're aware of the spectrum. So it's like when I'm communicating these factual, logical things, then I'm able to do it in a way that everybody can understand because we see the spectrum using these functions of the SE and TE. While like Byron Katie, it's like her ST is personal. It's SITI, so it's kind of like,
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes sense because you seem to speak the same language. That makes sense. Yeah, and she doesn't all the time. You know, which it's weird because it's like I get what you're saying, I just don't know what you're saying. You know, so it's just like the concept. Maybe I'm getting the concepts. I'm like, what you're saying, I get. But what you're saying, I don't get. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I get the point, but I don't understand the sensory, but I get the concept. I guess that's it.
All right, guys, before we jump into the FI, I just want to make a few comments that I think is very entertaining to see and also very interesting. So earlier, I can definitely see like the IJEP and the IPEJ interact, what do you call it? Natural connection happening. Like with Josh and Abby earlier, you guys were both being weird about bugs. You know, I hate bugs, by the way, too. I'm an EP, so I can relate. When you guys were ranting about bugs, I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, I completely agree with you guys. Yeah, I hate those bugs, spiders, bees, whatever, you know, screw all those things, right? So yeah, that's why I like camping, but only if it's clean, you know, no bugs, right?
Yeah, I relate to that.
Yeah. So like if I go hiking, I only find trails that has no insects, you know, like, I mean, it's hard. It's impossible, but yeah. So, and also earlier, like Alan and Julien, like Alan was like admiring Julien's freedom with the FI, and then Julien was like, you know, when we're talking about Alan being the spokesperson for everyone else, John's like, oh, I need one of those people, you know, like, so it's like,
oh, good point, good catch.
So it's like, yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, you know, there's definitely like that synergistic relationship with every type, and there is such thing as like speaking the same language. Like you guys are speaking Alan and Julian are speaking the decider language, while Abby and Josh are speaking the observer language. So I kind of
great catch.
See that, yeah. But you guys are all the same function, so you guys like understand each other. I think.
Yeah.
So let's jump in now to your identity, guys. FI, this is the big one. You know, and the cool thing here is that we have every single sexual modality here too, right? So every single one is covered. So this is super cool. 2 of you have feminine FI and 2 of you have masculine FI. I think, let me just see, SEFI. So like Abby, for example, is gonna be very interesting because she has double feminine SEFI, for example, right? So that's like, oh, what is that like, you know? And then one of you, I think Julien has double masculine SEFI, right? So there's like a huge contrast there with you guys. Well, you know, Josh and Alan are more in the middle when it comes to that. Although Alan is double feminine with the sleep part of the FI, right? While Josh is double masculine. So you guys have that polarity going on. So feel free to add in the different sexual modalities to, not sexual modalities, sorry, animals. Okay, so either the consume or the sleep. Feel free to talk about that as well. So the only person that hasn't gone first yet, I'm sorry, Abby, you're the only one that hasn't gone first yet. So you have to go first this time. I'm trying to talk right now to buy you time to think, but so
how dare you pick me to be first for the hardest one to answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. I'm good.
Thanks for that. Yeah, but go for it.
What was the question? So what do I think of my FI?
Yeah, you talk about your you know, like what you value in life, you know, talk about your consume, maybe if you want to talk about what you NF sleep process, what your purpose is, what your meaning in life is, you know, like all that kind of stuff. You know, it's gonna be your FI is feminine, right? So it's gonna be movable. So it's kind of interesting to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah, I feel like with feminine FI, I don't really hold on to anything, like kind of how Julien was talking about feminine TE, not holding on to it. I don't hold on to what I like very concretely. I don't hold on to what I believe are morals very tightly. So it's very like swooshy, and I think it lends to being open-minded in that. And so like tying that back to consume a little bit of being able to see a lot of different other people's perspectives, just because it's so swooshy anyway that I can get dragged away. And then in terms of like purpose and stuff, I think it really goes down a lot back to the double masculine and T. Like it's not necessarily like a passion, or I feel like, you know, I'm called to do something. It's I've SETE'd all the opinions and the reasons for why something should be the way it is, and it just makes sense for me to act in a certain way, and therefore that becomes my purpose and my mission in life. So for example, the business that I run is a purpose-led business that, you know, does wealth distribution, redistribution back into the community, and that just makes sense. So I do it, and that becomes like my meaning in life almost. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Wealth distribution, like, so you're what does that mean exactly? Like you're giving money away for free, or?
Yeah, basically, kind of. So part of the structure of our business is that we built into the cost for folks to pay a premium onto our services, and that money gets redistributed back to like organizing efforts of marginalized communities. So it's kind of, because I teach systemic oppression, so it's kind of like walking the talk. If I teach it, then I need to do it as well, right? And so this is part of like the purpose-led thing. And then it's based on this idea of how mental health is supposed to be community-based, not just individual. Like you can't just, drive your way through. And so incorporating that into the business too. So it's always building on something that makes sense. And then as I'm doing it, as it becomes a bigger part of my life, that becomes the purpose and the mission.
And then your SF is interesting. So you talk about your NF, which is clear. Well, the SF is double feminine, but it's double activated also. So it's like that's kind of where you live.
Yeah, I kind of see it as more like opportunistic. I feel like NE is more about possibilities, but SE is more about opportunities. So I'm very like, I feel like I'm very like scanny for the environment, for what opportunities are available, and then very like jumping onto it. And because it's double activated, my initial reaction is always to go for it, go for the new thing. And then also EP, right? So like go for the new thing, go for the new opportunity, and then figure it out and make it work after.
Give an example of when we saw an opportunity and you jumped right away.
Teaching, that wasn't part of my plan. I don't like to talk, so teaching seems like very ironic. But that was kind of presented to me, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And then this whole business thing kind of came together as like an opportunity that presented. I kind of put it together in like a month. It wasn't like super thought out, like I thought about this for years kind of thing. Much of my life is not based on planning it out. Much of my life is based on things I heard like on TV shows, and then I just decided to go for it, and it stuck.
TV shows, that's funny. That's like the EP story where like things just kind of fell on your lap. So that's how you ended up on it. I want to go to Josh next with this actually, because Josh is the controller here, so he's gonna control his future essentially. I want to hear what that sounds like in contrast to Abby's like, I just fell on my lap, so I'm doing it.
Well, all right, guys. So this one's a tough one for me. And the reason being, it makes me uncomfortable to talk about because I don't want to come off a certain way or anything like this, but I can only give my truth. That's all I can do, right? So the reason, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I've been disappeared. I've been gone for a while now. So like never on social, never anywhere. No one talks to me. And what's been happening over the last year is I've really been, diving into myself and just cleaning everything out. And so long story short, it's kind of hard for me to understand, to even think about, because when it comes to values or anything, I've been kind of just removing my ego, okay, and identity. So anything that's a value or anything like this, when it comes to my desires and wants and things like that, I've removed so much of it. So even like my life now, as I used to be an entrepreneur, I used to spend as an entrepreneur, I would spend, business owner, whatever. I would be working like anywhere between like 15 and 20 hours a day. Now I work about 30 minutes to maybe 2 hours tops, but usually closer to the 30 minutes. So my entire days, I don't have any plans. It's just what comes is what comes. It's just, I just live in the present. That's it. And so I don't like talking that way because it can come off a certain way as like, what do you think, you're just awesome, or you have no ego, or whatever. But it's just my honest truth is I don't really I don't plan anything. I don't desire much. I'm very content. I'm very happy with just living as everything is. So I don't even think as far as like what I want. Even when it comes to mild preferences, I just kind of just live. If I do have any preferences, they're so subtle where if I don't get them, I don't care. I don't prefer one over another. Like Austin was asking me when I was telling him this, he's like, so would you rather hook up with a bunch of girls or would you rather dig a ditch? And I'm like, honestly, both sound great to me. So I don't really care. It's to that extent, right? So that's just my truth, guys. I'm sorry. I know that answer sucks terribly bad, but that's just my truth. So I would probably be better if you asked me questions about that may help a little bit more. But as far as my FI now, I can also talk about how my FI feels by nature, how I used to be. But as far as now, there's not much of my FI in my life. I don't even see myself, I'm gonna get really NF hippie on this. I don't even really see myself as a identity really anymore as much. I kind of just see myself as just, I don't know, just another thing that's happened. I mean, it's almost like I'm seeing myself from a third person. So I know that's weird, but that's just my truth.
Is it kind of like similar to what Jim Carrey is doing?
I don't know his story, but probably it's not, from what I heard about it. Yes. It's like, it's just, it's because I hit a certain point where the pain is just unbelievably unbearable. And eventually you start to realize that anything you get from the world is going to keep causing you pain. And so moments of happiness is what I just lived in, is all these moments of happiness. And then eventually that it always leads to pain in some way. It's like, you get rich, well, that sucks. Everyone's going to milk you for your money. You get the girl of your dreams, she's going to make you miserable in ways. You get famous, well, now you can't leave your house. You're a hermit. Like, you know, everything was leading to pain. And I got everything on the surface that I really wanted in life. I got everything I can think of for the most part that I've actually wanted. And so eventually I was depressed, and then I've had so much pain where it's just, that was my natural progression. Yeah.
All right, man. Really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, sorry guys. I wanted to give a good answer and help with some insight with this, but if you have any questions for me, if you want to see how I can answer anything, if it relates, but
yeah. We can loop back to that later.
Yeah. No worries at all. Yeah.
We'll get to a section later where we can ask, you guys can ask each other questions, specifically about your life experience. Why don't we go with Julien next? Julien with the is the opposite of Abby, with the double masculine SF consume, but also, you know, more balance with the sleep. So go for it with the FI there, Julien. Your lead FI too, so you're gonna be the guy that's gonna be the most this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the identity is kind of hard no matter where you have it in your stack or not. And I mean, I can't help but say that I understand where Josh is coming from, and I've talked to Josh a lot about what he's talking about right now, and I get that, and I can see that for a lot of the way. But speaking of what, I just wanted to hang a hat on that for one, just to acknowledge that. But as for FI, as I experienced it, it's kind of like this solidness, you know. It's kind of like my foundation. If we're talking about personality and typology, then the FI is where I feel confident, where I feel at home. It's my sense of certainty. It's my sense of self-belief. But it's posed a lot of challenges earlier in my life as well, you know, when there's a lot of immaturity in the functions, and the FI can be very unrealistic. It can be irrational and very immature in the sense where, I remember when I was playing video games back when I was a kid, I was playing with my friends, I wouldn't want any of us to play, like, say it was like a fantasy game or whatever, I wouldn't want any of us to play the same type of character. Like, I would be adamant about that, and I'd be like, no, like, I won't even play something I like if somebody else is playing it, because, like, I want everybody to be unique and different, and we all have to play like a role, which is like a really weird kind of single decider way of seeing things. And it's like, if I didn't like something, I would just leave, you know. I might not even say anything. Like, if I was in a situation where I didn't like it, I wouldn't communicate it. I would just leave, and people would be like, what the fuck? Like, what's wrong with that guy? Like, why did he just leave? He didn't even say anything. And, you know, I try to reform in my later life and kind of just cool down on the whole FI. And well, as I was acknowledging what Josh was saying, I went through this process as well, where it's kind of like trying to let go of the desires. And I went to India and I sat with a guru, and I was very into this deep meditation and spirituality. And at the end of it, I felt like, if we're talking about a senses of meaning or whatnot, I can argue that there's no sense of meaning in anything, or there's 50 senses of meaning for anything. You know what I'm saying? It's like, pick anything you want, and I can tell you that there can be a meaningful path for that when it's related to transience, where it's related to personality, where it's related to this world we're living in. Or I can tell you that it's completely meaningless on a vast timeline of the universe. You know, all things that are transient, basically just like ones and zeros, in the sense that it arises, it drifts, it changes, it falls away, it dissipates, it's gone, you know? And what impression does it leave but upon those who experience it as consciousness, you know? And so if you get rid of all the people who are experiencing it, who decide how much value it has, because we're the ones who decide what is meaningful and what has value to something, then they're all equal. There's no difference to anything. It's all just a single blank slate of gray. And so these individuals who we are as egos with our personalities, we create this richness in the world because we give value to things, and we create this juxtaposition, this duality of this is not valuable, this is valuable, this is good, this is bad, this is great, this is awesome, this is not so much. And so we give this rich texture to the world through ego, but all the joy and high of joy we experience through this also has this low of depression and angst. And so I think a lot with the FI and the NI about what is meaningful in life, what is my meaning in life, what is my purpose in life. And it's getting stuck in this place where it's like, well, I can argue that nothing is meaningful and I can argue that anything is meaningful. So how do you make a decision? And maybe that's the single decider issue of trying to decide something. And I admire Josh's position in life, where he first went off and accomplished all the things he wanted to accomplish. He experienced the full spectrum of obtaining desires in the world. And after he had that, he's like, okay, now I want to seek something more, something deeper. Well, it's like my first instinct in the world was to go seek out what was more than all of these things that we can interact with and that we desire and that we want to get. And going in that direction, it's kind of like I came out the other side, and it's like, oh, and now I want to experience this ego desire. Like I want to obtain some things, but it's like Josh says, you know, there's always suffering attached to any kind of desire that you're looking for. And so even though my FI is this solid foundation of who I am, and I get confidence from it, and I get security from it, it also feels like the source of all my confusion and everything that causes me pain and suffering. And so it's very interesting double-edged sword, and I'm just trying to slowly temper it and slowly try to come to peace with the world, you know, with reality, with myself, with everybody else, with anything, you know, like just radical acceptance and just be peaceful with all of this, you know, because what I experience, what we all experience, what is here, this is real. Even if somebody could make an argument that it's like a simulation, or it's kind of unreal, or it's just based off of the observer, because we experience it to a degree, there is a sense of realness to it. And I guess also a sense of unreality to it, but it's here, you know, it doesn't just go away if we don't believe in it. It's here. So just trying to make peace with that. And, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I'm confused, to be honest.
Yeah, that's interesting, bro. Yeah.
I think I spoke in a very confusing way, and I'm sorry that I probably wasn't very clear. But
it's funny because I was like, here's Julien's NF coming out, and then I see Alan. I don't know how he actually feels inside, but he's just like, and I was like, oh, ST. He's probably like, what kind of hippie talk is this? I don't know if he's actually feeling that way, but it's just he's going like this. And I was like, if he's just like, oh man, what the F is he talking about? I don't know, but dude,
that's how I feel too.
Thank you for sharing that. But thanks for sharing that, man. I picked up some good gems in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's interesting though. Let's talk after, bro, because I'm interested to talk about your journey. School. Yeah,
definitely.
Well, I mean, you guys all share the same function, so I think you guys will understand each other pretty well, you know, because it's just different order. Yeah. So, well, it's Alan's time now. Alan, FI in the bottom right there. You know, feminine.
Yeah, look, actually, I thought that was profoundly clear.
Oh, good.
At least through my own perspective. I was going like this because I was thinking, fuck, this is getting deep.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I couldn't pretend to say I understand your perspective, but your words through my own experience, I understand. And I thought it was interesting before the comment with Josh, because that's one thing I noticed very early on with the OPS and typology world. It seems the common bond to dip the toes in that water is pain and suffering. A lot of people are hesitant to admit that, but that was my observation. I will talk about this on 3 layers. I have to say this because I think I'll get sidetracked and forget. So one is the TFI axis coupled with my consume, and then identity as a container. So the question in itself was about identity, and for me, what I would say is I don't really look at FI in those terms, even though you could probably say what I'm about to say is FI. So for me, identity is very much a specific set of programming and behaviors that we choose to prescribe to. And I fundamentally believe there's always an opportunity to break that programming. It can be very hard. And people perhaps with their masculine FITI would say otherwise, but that's what I truly believe. And I think it doesn't matter where that FI sits in your stack. At points in your life, you're going to go through evolution and changes of that programming. In regards to that planning for the future and the whole life is meaningless versus meaningful, I can't think of a single decision that's created me duress when I look back at it in the past and go, geez, that decision was as hard as what I thought it was in the past. It seems impossible at the time, but then you realize we're resilient creatures and you'll find a way. I just personally can't think of a single decision that caused me agony, late nights, where I go, if I made that decision now, it'd be so much easier. That's me. In regards to then how I really look at the FI, assuming that I'm working with the programming and values, etc., that I choose to wake up with at this point in time, for me, it's still very much decider-ish in the sense of I look at it as the tension of the TE and the FI, what I perceive as the needs of others versus my own. I still will often prioritize the needs of others. And I think that's why people assume or would reference me as efficient with what I do, because it's very easy for me to put aside my own thoughts on things or desires on things and just do that other thing. And so that then creates that whole swings and roundabouts or tidal waves, whatever you want to call it, where then there is a need for me to rebel the other way and do things for myself. And I'm still very much subject to that. I can see that this year's been particularly hard, where I prioritize a lot of things. There's been a known plan, and the way that I've had to deal with that, well, the way I've chosen to deal with that is through a lot of meaningless consume, where you know, in the sense of you're not prioritizing yourself during the day, so you try and recuperate at night. For me, consume can be a really mindless activity. You know, pretty much, you know, I could easily probably watch YouTube for 2-3 hours a night. I reckon if I check my watch history, it would say that on average. And that's my battery recharge time. But I look at it all the time and say, this is so meaningless. I could be using that in so many other ways. That is still complementary to my desires and direction I'm seeking to forge. But yeah, that's my answer.
Sweet.
Cool, man. All right. Do you guys have any questions for each other? I know before the interview, I asked you guys to prepare something. I don't know if you guys did or forgot. It's okay if you did, you forget. But you can ask now. It's okay. So, you know, it's not often that you guys get to share the same panel with, you know, all of the same quadra as you, in different orders, of course. So I'm pretty sure there's something burning like in your head. Like for me, for example, whenever I, you know, talk to other people that are similar types as me, I always ask them, okay, what are you doing for your sleep? Because I'm curious. Like I want to learn more, you know, like Dave and Shan said, I can use it, but they said I only have 50% use. So I want to learn how to use the other 50% so I can be complete, right? So I have that sense of wholeness. So I'm curious to you guys, you know, like you guys, you know, like Abby and Alan, you're both blast last. But Alan, it's kind of more interesting because your blast is like your first two functions. So based on the classes that they've been teaching, those that have blast last, but it's still their first two function, once they get going, it's pretty damn good, but it's just hard to get going. Well, with Abby, it's her freaking bottom two. So, but it's double masculine though. So it has like that awareness of it. Cause I do notice that whenever you have a double masculine animal, there is like a gravitational pull towards using it, even if it's fourth, right? Josh has the same boat as Abby. You know, Josh is also sleep last, but it's double masculine also. So there's gonna be like a weird gravitational pull towards it. And then Julien he's almost like the pure blood IP. So I'm kind of curious about that. Like, you know, like sleep is correlated with an IP because, you know, it's yourself as opposed to the tribe. And then you're play last too, right? Which is essentially the tribe. So you're like the pure blood of like an IP as could be. So we do have a good mix of, you know, combinations here for you guys. So what questions do you guys have for each other based on your specific function stack that is different order that you would like to learn to better grow yourself as a person? Or just if you're just curious about the other person. So who wants to go first? Crickets.
I could go. I have questions. I didn't prepare. I wish I did. I didn't know. I didn't remember. But I'm always curious about this question for almost anybody. But I really want to ask it to Alan and Abby in particular, what their idea of success is. Like, how do they measure success in their life? Because I'm sure it's so different from how I would. And I think it's really valuable to know because I feel like I'm lost. And when I see people with TE, I'm like, that seems like the right way to do things, you know?
Abby, would you like to go first?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, okay. I guess I am. Okay. When you first asked that, I was like, I don't track that. But I think if I were to, you know, come up with something on the fly, success is if I'm contributing to the world in a way where I left the world better than when I entered it. And that can be like anything, right? So if I'm moving it towards the needle, I mentioned in our last interview the AI overlords, and that's still kind of my bar. So like when the AI overlords come and they like talk about whether or not you're a good human, if we're like leaving the world better than I left it, I think I would score a lot of points. Or like what's coming up to mind, sorry, challenging, is the Good Place. I don't know if any of you have watched that, but like scoring points when you win, and or so that you can get to the good place or something. I really shouldn't volunteer to talk first. I'm not really sure what's happening right now in my brain. Yeah, I don't know. Success, do
you want to loop back to it, Abby?
Leaving it better. I think this is, I think I'm just going to say the same thing over and over again. It's just leaving the world better than you started. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
I like how
that's good. That's great.
Alan was so cheeky because they're both blast last, but then Alan is like, you go. You know, he was going to talk, but then he passed it to Abby.
You know what's so interesting too
is like,
masculinity. Just so you guys can understand what it's like being lead blast is like, I never have any idea what I'm ever going to say ever. I just know it's going to be like the right thing when I say it. You know what I'm saying? I have no idea. So like, I don't, because if I sit in that, then it would just get worse for me. So I just start talking and then something comes out and you do that enough times. I feel like everyone has that in them, blast, I guess. So if you do that enough time, it works. Yeah.
Even as activated blast, I feel the same way where it's kind of like, you just start talking and sometimes it fails where like you start talking and then you drift off and then I'll be like, I was just started talking. Like I wasn't going anywhere. Like that.
Yeah. Just keep practicing it though. Like I think at least, because I started out, whether people know it or not wanting to blast shy because I'm almost an EJ with my activations. You know, I'm very close to EJ. My FI is technically at the very bottom because of that. So I almost feel like an EJ, you know, and so but then eventually I just started talking. Of course, being lead blast, technically, then I guess it works quicker for me, but I think everyone can get there. It's just going to be longer. Yeah.
I like your encouragement, Josh, since you're the only Savior blast here.
Yeah.
It's a great question. It's one that I think is valuable to ask yourself regularly, or even coupled with, are you spending your time on the things that you should be spending your time on? I think this is much more than a simple yes or no question, and ties in with what I was speaking before about the identity container constantly evolving, and with each progression, that metric or definition of success is going to evolve too, and there's that acclimatization period. And if you find yourself asking that question, then it indicates to me that you're in some sort of threshold point where progression is in place or about to, because change, at least from my point of view, comes about when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's why I don't personally have any questions for anyone. I would have a couple of years ago, because I was chasing that type of knowledge and foresight, but like through recognizing my own pathway to resilience, I've also recognized I'll be ready for it when I'm ready, and the answers will show itself. But as for success, the way that I look at it today would be along the lines of, am I making decisions in a way that doesn't cause, regret's not the right word, but where it doesn't matter where I am, I don't have feelings of unanswered business, or I should have done things differently, or that type of stress attached with outcomes. And, you know, I don't want to call it living my truth, but you could paraphrase it that way. And that's effectively how I'm looking at it. And at the moment, I would say I'm at a point where the past 6 months has revealed to me I'm probably not living life with the balance that leads me to say success. But it's not a simple KPI or key performance indicator of, you know, these things are happening, so this is success. It's much more nuanced and much more of a general feeling. But yeah, and that applies to many spectrums across life, and I think that's part of that evolution. And so I think a lot of people start with a focus on one particular spectrum. The most common one in a Western capital world will probably be wealth, just through that cultivation of media and family background. But then if you get to the point where the container expands, there'll be other spectrums. I mean, even motorcycling terms, because I've recently started to learn how to ride. It's amazing to see how many people say, oh, you know, when I was 18-year-old, I was doing all these wild stunts, and now that I've got a family and kids, I'll never do that again. And that's an example of that evolution in thought, identity, success. So that's my answer.
Well, you know what I think is interesting? So us three are tribe over self, Julien self over tribe. And to me, success is evolution. So, and I think for tribe people, it's going to be the same. So it starts from the outside world and achieving or changing, really a tribe over self, trying to help others or helping a certain amount of people, and then maybe money and success and all that. But I think that it evolves to ourself, right? And so to me now, the definition of success is, can you go through life completely joyful, blissful, and completely unblemished by whatever happens around you, then stay joyful. So it doesn't mean any denial or pushing away, none of that. You're accepting everything in totality, accept everything, right? But you have enough space and distance where you're still connected to that, I'm gonna sound NF for a sec, that true presence of who you truly are. And you're not getting confused with like, oh, if this happens in the world, then I'm happy, or if this happens, then if things go my way, I'm happy. If things don't go my way, I'm unhappy. So if you can go through life where no one's making you upset, that's your responsibility, or no one's, or whatever happens around you, you can lose all your money and you're still joyful, then to me, that's success, because that's what truly matters. Every single thing everybody in the world is doing is to try to get to that place of joy and bliss anyway. We just think that going through the things is going to create that. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but sometimes I hate being intuitive, but I hope it makes enough sense where I think it's the evolution. And I find it interesting that Julien, when he's talking about this, he started there, and then now he's going to try to find success in the outer world more, where it's just the reverse. Does that make sense? So I think that's very interesting. But I think that, I guess if we give questions, Julien, my question is, does that sound like you started focused on the inner world, happiness, trying to find that success, and now you're going toward the outer world, looking for success? Does that sound right?
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this. It's funny, Josh, because the reason why I didn't ask you in the and I'm glad you answered, was because I knew that was your answer, and I agree with it 100%. And I did kind of start with that position, and now just in the last few years, I've become sort of aware of the spectrum of success. Like maybe more TESE, but it's kind of like I'm in this. Well, I want to use an analogy of when I did weightlifting. So I used to do Olympic weightlifting. And there's a clean and jerk and the snatch, which are like two styles of lifting. And the snatch is like when you take the bar from the ground and you bring it up over your head, right, in one clean motion. And what would happen a lot of time is that somebody, if they would make a mistake, they'd either have the bar a little bit too backwards, so it would fall backwards. And then the second time, they would put the bar a little bit too forward, so the bar would fall forward. And then the third time, they would adjust to get it right in the middle, and it would be a successful lift. And I feel like this is kind of what's happening in my life, and which is why I'm curious in these questions, is that I first started in like trying to find the bliss of the self, and just a detachment from desire, and detachment from wanting, and this outside obtaining. And I found that in India, and I had a couple of years of just like true bliss, where I would just spend like 3 hours a day meditating, and I didn't want anything, like maybe I would mow lawns for a living, and I felt great about that. And it didn't matter what I did, it didn't matter where I was, I just felt joy, because I felt like detached from desire and all of that. And then it feels like now, after finding objective personality and moving away from that, and trying to think like, oh, I wanted, when I was like 25, I'm like, I'm moving out of my parents, like I'm going out of my own world here. I want to get some success. I want to be able to live an intentional life, because to me, success is kind of a combination of what Josh said in that, but also combined with intentionality, and which is like, this is the intention that I had for life. This is like, I'm in control of this life, and not necessarily in the way of like, this is exactly how I wanted it to go, but it's more like in the way it can be, as Josh said as well, where it's like, I'm cool with whatever happens, like my intention is just to be cool, and that's fine. And that's how it worked out as well. And so now I feel like I'm yo-yoing to the other side, where it's like, I'm trying to figure out the extroverted world success, so that after that, I can come back to the middle and balance the two of the inner and the outer. You know what I mean?
So you saying that, Julien, really quick, is that's my plan. So that's exactly. So now I'm going to go back, but I want to make sure I stay grounded and into the place I am now. So then when I go back, I'm in complete joy. Like I'm not attached to whatever happens and doesn't. It's just all fun, right? It's just like, I'm just gonna have fun, right? But I am going to go back into the physical world and try to make a bigger impact and difference after. So that's so funny. So I think eventually you live in the balance is in the middle, just like all things. But because what's the point of sitting on a hill and being happy and blissful and as a monk? Right? Like, what good is that? Like, unless you can help others out of their suffering while they still are able to go live modern day lives, So freaking cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Nice. At least that's my goal is when I do go back, it's not just going to be doing real estate or something. It's going to intentionally be trying to help people out of all their suffering. Because man, I tell you, Julien, you knows, like when you touch this bliss, it's like that's all you want. Like, I mean, there's nothing, you realize everything else is so puny. All these other like human emotions of like happiness is like, that's not shit. It's so puny. It's just like pew, 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 it comes and goes, whatever. But when you touch that core bliss, I don't know how else to word it, but when you touch that, it's just like, it's just so actually fulfilled. It's actually like the best. And so having that and living in the physical world, that combination is the best combo in my opinion. So yeah.
So you guys both have masculine FI, and this sounds like a kind of your definition of success in life is the balance, kind of like the analogy that Julien used with the clean and jerk and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to make fun of Josh a little bit. I was going to say, oh yeah, there's a lot of bugs in India. If you do that, I don't think you're gonna be being bliss, man. But anyways,
I'm just gonna keep some bug spray around.
Yeah. But no, but I get your perspectives and how you both live in complete different worlds, and you're kind of like,
yeah, so where me and him is going like,
you're trading lives. You're trading lives essentially. Yeah, you're trading lives.
Yeah.
And then after you go to the other side, then you can now make a more balanced decision later on.
The balance, yeah,
because you can see both.
I had it in that suffering, bro. Suffering blows. If anyone's been depressed or anxious all the time, like that shit sucks. So my goal, get all out of that first, and then you go find your balance. You know. Yeah,
you're doing an inner cleaning, right? But it's kind of interesting because Abby and Alan, you guys are like in the middle. It's like you guys are like a weird type, because like you're both like one of like Alan's an EJEP and then Abby's an EPEJ. But then you're both double activated FI, so they're already in the middle, kind of. Then the only thing they're not doing is
glass lizards, kind of.
Yeah, they're like not doing the blast, so it's like a little bit confusing. I'm like, so yeah, and you guys have feminine FI too, so like what you want can change. So it's like, how do you make a definitive decision? Like, Josh and Julien, it seems like, yep, we are hammering out that FI, and we're gonna get it. But then you guys are feminine FI, so it's like, huh? So like, what's going on there? Abby, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that piece about the masculine FI and this talk about finding joy and peace. And I don't know if that's like a masculine FI thing, because with feminine FI, my emotions go like really quick. So getting joy and peace doesn't actually like connect. Like it doesn't really mean that much to me, because it like there's such a what is the word I'm looking for? Damn femininity, I can't find the word. I know the concept. There's a felt sense that's happening in my body right now that I'm trying to articulate. I don't know. There's almost this kind of savoring of even negative emotions, because I feel like I have more of a grasp on it, because if it happens, it happens and it'll go away pretty quickly. I think for me, a lot of my growth is more about leaning into my ethics and not necessarily about what like feels good. Because it doesn't have to feel good for me to feel good. It could be like the most painful thing that I do, and I still feel good about it because it's part of who I want to be as a person. Right?
Well, that's really good. Yeah. So, really quick. So
I'm gonna agree with you say anyway. So I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna say the same thing. So what's interesting is I actually agree with that. So for me, it wasn't about just getting happy, because it was just about really ending the suffering. And then I didn't expect to find joy and bliss and all that. That just kind of, that was completely unexpected. Okay. But as a thinker, I don't really care how I feel in I care about getting the job done really too. Okay. So where I'm getting at, I guess, is for me, it's I'm not ever thinking I want to be joyful and happy today and let's go freaking be happy. Like, I don't really care. I actually can sit in now in my life. I can sit in the suffering of forever. It doesn't bother me. I don't really think about that. Right. So I can sit in the pain of any emotion and just kind of just sit with it. It's not that big of it's not, I don't have an impulse. I dumb down that impulse of wanting to run from it, right? Or just wanting to run from it. So I agree with that, actually. I agree. I'm trying to think how to word it, but I agree with balance, right? So I agree, like, it's like, if as long as if I'm suffering, I'm no good for anyone else anyway, right? And so, but if you're out of suffering, then now you start to think about like what matters and what matters to you, or what do you want to do in the world? And to me, it's just like, I want to help in the suffering. I'm not necessarily trying to get people to have bliss, but that's probably going to happen on this journey. But now I'm unclear of where I was going. But somewhere in there, hopefully I threw some pieces out there where you could pick up and be like, yeah, that makes sense. But I agree with you as far as, it's not about running from, I don't mind sitting in the unpleasant emotions. But the thing is the more I detach from everything, how can I explain it? It's like the negative emotions are coming from a thought. Okay. And then the thought, you have to, that's for a reason. I think your pain is a gift. So you find out what was the core of that unpleasantness as a path to get you closer to your true nature, or whatever you want to say it. So I think that pain has a purpose in that sense. That's how I think, maybe as a thinker, is like the purpose of the pain is to give you your lesson, or it keeps recurring. And you're going to notice that almost all your pain is coming usually from some type of unconscious pattern, and that's where tidal waves and all that stuff comes in too. But even smaller patterns, right? So it's coming from some type of unconsciousness. You just weren't conscious about something. So once you get that kind of consciousness connected to it, then now you're just more conscious in general each day of your life. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm listening to you guys talk, and like I'm just listening to Josh's story, with suffering and depression and whatnot, and then hence why you went to this journey to find bliss, and you kind of flip your life around. But then Abby's point of view was like her FI is feminine, so bad feelings are not bad feelings because they go away just as quick as the good feelings, so it doesn't really matter. But you have masculine FI, which I can relate to you as well because I have it as well. So bad feelings, they don't go away, they stay in there. So if you don't change your life like drastically like you did, it's gonna get stuck in there, and it's toxic, it's poisonous, right? So,
well, yes, great point, but really, really quick. But what I noticed is when you watch your dogs, if you guys have dogs or every other animal, this is pretty cool. I think you guys might like this, hopefully. If you notice, emotions just come and go. Just like, I think even though we're masculine emotion, pay attention. To keep an emotion alive, you have to keep saying a story in your head. You have to have the looping thoughts. And so what's interesting is like if a lion's chasing a gazelle, what happens is the gazelle's in fight or flight. The second the lion starts gassing out and running out of energy, chasing it, the gazelle will go down and start eating grass. Okay. Now, even though it can see the lion in sight, the reason being is because animals don't have words to create stories. Okay. So it knows it's not in danger. And so the emotion stops. Or if you guys have two dogs or something, they'll get into it. And then 2 seconds later, they go cuddle with each other. Okay. So that's how quick actually emotions are. But I think that I don't know how this works with functions, but there's something about with masculine, because I agree with you, Kendrick, it does seem to stay, but also notice the emotions went away already, but we have to keep thinking thoughts over and over to keep it alive. And I attach that to the ego because it wants to feel real. So it has to keep stories 24/7. And those stories is what's actually creates those looping thoughts where you can't get rid of those thoughts. And so I figured out how to shut off those thoughts. Like through my experience, I'd say 75-80% of my thoughts just went away like almost right away. And then now I can just sit and just have no thoughts. I can just sit there, whatever. And so my point is I won't feel emotion unless I'm thinking thoughts, right? Like I won't feel a unpleasant emotion or anything like that. I'm just kind of experiencing it. Or if it does come, then it just kind of goes. So I'm just throwing this out there because maybe you guys can pick up something where it's like my masculine F almost turned feminine F, because if I feel something, then I just don't have thoughts that keep going to keep it alive. And that is what was torturing me, was they were staying alive. But then I realized, oh, well, that comes from looping stories because you have to have a past or future story in order, which is the ego, right? Like identity, the ego. But if you're in the present moment without thoughts, there's no emotion there. It's just what's next, what's happening right now. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say? So I'm curious too with masculine, if we have some bias to have some type of looping thoughts with our savior identity. But I've noticed that you cannot stop your thoughts. If you guys have looping thoughts, you can't stop them until you remove whatever it is away from your identity. If not, your ego is going to go nonstop to try to keep it alive. If you can't stop those looping thoughts. So everyone's like, how do I stop my thoughts? Well, you can't until you remove whatever the concept of the thoughts is from your identity. And then it just loses interest. It's just like you just see it kind of like, I used to care about that and think about it all the time. And your brain just loses interest. And then it's just like, oh, well, whatever. It's like thinking about Rockies or, well, I'm in Colorado Rockies, you know, it's like, what can I obsess over? Right. Because it's not part of my identity anymore. Does that make sense? So
real quick. Yes. It's like the attention, you know, it's like where we put our attention into a thought is how alive it is what I'm reading off of what you're saying here, Josh, in the sense that we have 100, maybe 1,000 thoughts a day that we could never even associate with because it was just so not connected to our identity. It was meaningless to us, you know, kind of like, oh, that tree is kind of.
Yeah,
like,
you're not obsessing over the tree.
Yeah,
and
you forget about it a second later,
yeah.
you know, and you're on to the next thought. But then the thoughts that can connect to our identity, maybe this is where the masculinity comes in, where we have a stronger sense of connecting to identity. These are the ones that more attention is going towards, and then that's how it survives longer in our mind, and that's why the looping continues.
Well said. That's it. No, that's exactly it. And so once you finally go in and do the Byron Katie work or something as a gateway to attach to the thoughts that's connected to that, then eventually it just falls apart, falls away. I did the Byron Katie work like nonstop for like 3 months straight. And then my whole life like was starting to change. And then I went further, but that's pretty much it. Is everything that gives you any discomfort or something, you do the things to release the thought, and then the thought goes away. And then now I can sit here right now in this moment and have 0 thoughts and just be beautifully at peace and turn into my head. It's almost just completely empty. And then I just sit here and whatever happens, I'm just completely content here and just sitting with you guys. And it's freaking, it's so much freedom, man. Yeah. So I don't know if that's helpful. Maybe it's helpful for some viewers that may be wondering why they're having looping thoughts. And then they're like, well, then how do I get off their identity? Then go to do the Byron Katie works the easiest way. There's a lot of different ways, but that's probably the most simple way. And I hope that helps somebody.
Okay, so I'm watching you guys talk like you know, Josh and Julien versus like Abby and Alan. I'm not trying to like make you guys fight or anything. I'm just like kind of seeing the different school of thoughts here. So
look, that was quite a side to. I want to say something back to Abby. I've been waiting a long time. The way Abby spoke about the FI before, in particular of ethics. I'm asking a question of how I interpreted it to Abby. Please confirm or deny. The way I interpreted what you said was that if what you're doing is aligned with what people expect of you, then deal with the pain because it was worth it.
Is that the end of the question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I see ethics and feelings as 2 separate things, like 2 separate components of FI. And if I am acting in alignment with what I believe is right, then that is my growth. It has very little to do with the felt sense of emotions. And I totally agree with what Josh was saying about like emotions and thoughts. There's actually studies published about how your emotions only last for like, 5 to 8 minutes if you don't fuel them with more thoughts. And what you're describing is basically narrative therapy and CBT put together. I think it's something completely different though, because I don't think I experience suffering the same way that you do. For me, it's about making my FI more solid, and my FI being solid is not about the transient nature of emotions. It's more about like the ethical nature of who I want to be in this world and how do I want to contribute to this world. So I don't know if that answers your question.
But that's in comparison to other people, right? Because maybe I'm too hamstrung on the word ethics, but ethics by virtue of the word implies group, not just self.
That's a good way of thinking about it. I don't think I've ever delineated whether ethics was self versus group. But there is something to be said about ethics being a conversation about what we owe to each other as humans in a society, right? So from that angle, I can definitely see that. I think ethics, for me, maybe my understanding is not fully developed yet because it's relatively new for me to live with ethics. But for me, ethics is knowing what I believe is right and what I should do in a given situation and doing it anyway, irregardless of what other people expect me to do or want me to do. Because I think with masculine TE, that's my natural default. I know exactly what you want me to do. And you as in the tribe seems unmovable. And therefore I need to move myself to fit with what you want of me. And so my growth comes with, I'm going to step out on my own based on what I think is right, what I believe should be how we take action. Does that make sense?
Yeah, see, I think going back quite a few years ago when I did my interview with Kendrick, I actually said something perhaps very similar back then. I don't prescribe to it now, but I think somebody, either Kendrick or Binyamin, asked along the lines of how'd you get into personality or self-development or whatever it was. And for me, it was about learning mechanisms to be flexible with people because I saw them as immovable. Very, very similar. So I've definitely been on the record saying something similar. That's why, like, it's interesting, regardless of the words coming out of your mouth, I'm interpreting it differently. I'm interpreting it personally. I'm internalizing everything you're saying as you're seeking permission from external, regardless of the word choice. It's probably a summation of how you're talking about it. I don't think it's biased on being feminine, FI. I'm not thinking about that at all whilst we're talking. It's just how you're saying and what. The other thing I'll say is, this is probably more for Josh. I don't know how to say this because I don't want to be. I don't want to be that guy, but it's going to come across that guy, but it doesn't have that intention. So the first thing, the first preface is, don't know you, don't know your story, so I'm not going to judge it. Because in the end, everything comes down to baseline. If you're doing the best that you can and you can see the difference from wherever you were before, that's awesome. I don't see the value in comparing it. But for me, like I find some ironies, and I'm going to be that guy and point them out. You do with it what you want. It's not coming from a nasty place at all. The first one is I found humor, and not laughing at you. It's not laughing at you, okay? I found humor in saying, I'm going to live in the moment now, and I'm going to use these tools in the future to do these things. That's not living in the moment. That's living a plan. Yeah. I need to point that out for you. Well, I don't need to. I'm choosing.
No, I can explain it if you'd like. Yeah.
Yeah. The other one. The other one is I don't have any thoughts. That's perhaps true as a baseline for you, but my God, once you start, mate, it's so impressive. The lead blast. You know, like if you compare to like myself and Abby, when we say we have no thoughts, it's on a different baseline. And that's not saying better or worse. It comes down to where did you start and where are you now? And for you, it's fucking awesome. For me, like my baseline is way lower and no thoughts, but that's not having a dig. It's just all relative. Look, the last thing I'll say is amazing that you're even willing to share these things online. It takes a lot of guts, regardless of where your identity sits in your stack, in my books. So the only thing I would say, and take it from this nobody you've never really dealt with before, there's always deeper, there's always further.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So we could leave it at that, or I could go through those if you'd like really quick.
It's up to you.
But one thing I wanted to acknowledge, I really liked your commentary with her right before this. That was really good. I really liked your perspective on ethics and things like that. That was really dope. So the first one really quick was, having the tools and being in the present moment. Great question. So I think there's still a balance. Like, I think there's a time to plan and then there's a time to not, in a sense, right? So it could be the single observer in me where it came off as all in, I tend to do that. So I'll get my tools ready and then I go to the present. And then when something happens, I have something in my tool shed or I don't. And then if I don't, then I just accept that as I don't. And then it is what it is. Goes my way, doesn't go my way, it is what it is. That's just life. Okay. So I hope does that bring clarity to that? So yes, I'll have tools. And I think of getting tools as like my sport and like it's fun for me. It's something that I really enjoy doing. But I do use them as a base, but I'm not a monk. So if I came off like I think I'm some monk and Jesus himself, that is not true, okay? This is just my journey so far. I could only explain my truth as of now. The second thing was, do you guys remember? It was the irony, I think you said. No, that was irony. Thoughts, not having thoughts. Yeah, so I don't think it's cool or accomplishment or anything like that. My point is, so when I say I have no thoughts, this doesn't mean I don't ever think, okay? What I'm saying is it's not impulsive anymore. So it's not like these looping thoughts come anymore and I can't, and I can't stop them or anything like that. What happens is it's just the need for thinking just keeps going down because it's like if I want to think, I can think. But I also don't need to think anymore. I can just sit and, for example, if you're just looking at a tree, if you're really in tune to it, then like if you're really focused in on it, then, okay, put it this way. In life, you're either thinking about life or you're experiencing life, in my opinion, in my experience. You're doing one or the other. And so when you're experiencing life, you're not having thoughts. Okay. And so, or you're thinking something about the things you're seeing, which means you're not experiencing it. It's one or the other. And so in my
that's a much clearer explanation. I understand where you're going with it from that angle.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's good. Okay, good. I'm glad that cleared things up. So, but I do choose to think quite often. Sometimes I'll sit and think and I'll plan or whatever. And then I move on. And then I'm just back into the moment. And then things go my way or they don't. So, and then the last one what was the last one?
I think that was it. I think that was it. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, dude, hey, honestly, I'm really glad you brought that up because chances are everyone was probably wondering the same thing. I do got to still watch my single observer talk. Gosh dang it. I hate when I go in the extremes of when I say things, it's like I got to keep remembering to bring that balance. But thanks for asking those questions and trying to understand something that maybe sounds tough to understand. So I appreciate that.
Okay, guys, so I've been gathering your NIs as you guys are talking here, your FIs as well. So I want to go back to before Julien vanished because his phone battery died. But so, like Josh and Julien, you guys have a similar journey, but like kind of going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And then Abby was kind of in a completely different place than you, Josh. And I think Alan is closer to Abby, probably because of the similarities in type and whatnot. And function sexual modalities. I read a book a long time ago called Stumbling into Happiness. They did a study on happiness pretty much. And I'm going to use this as a quick context to based on my observation of you guys. Okay. So in the book, they told a story of there's a rod that went through this guy's like chin over his head and a piece of the guy's brain came out.
Yes, I know that story.
Yeah. And then that part of the brain was the frontal cortex, which is so when he recovered, he's never been happier and he was functioning normally. So they're like, so what's wrong with you? A piece of your brain came out. What's wrong with you? I'm just paraphrasing the story. Obviously, don't take it like accurate. But turns out that piece of brain that came out was what was responsible for planning and future projection. And when the guy wasn't able to look into the future or plan ahead, there was no feeling of anxiety. And as a result, he became happier. A similar test result also came to another person. I forget exactly the same story, but the person had a head injury. And for that period of time during the recovery period, that woman also experienced the happiest or bliss, as Josh would use it earlier, as a result of not being able to plan or think to the future. Now, Josh and you and Julien are both intuitives, lead NI. And because you're so abusive, especially you, masculine NI, abusing that NI so much, then and in conjunction with your masculine FI as well, I just see like a compounding of anxiety. And earlier when you were talking to Alan about thinking and doing, and when you're doing, you don't really think. So therefore, you don't have as much anxiety because you're not thinking as much. So like earlier when Abby was saying, yeah, I don't, it's like basically she said she doesn't relate as much to what you said. Well, Abby's lead SE, so she's living in a moment, you know, same as Alan.
Right.
He lives in a moment, right? So there's no problem in a moment, you know. And so for them, they do need to use the intuition still to plan ahead, but only as a tool, not as like the main event or like the center of the stage. So you and Julien, you guys have NI, you know, pretty much, especially for you in the center stage. So I can definitely see like what you said. You know, I'm not trying to shit in your NIs, guys. I'm just like, I have NE here, so I'm just like I'm seeing the spectrum, right? So you know, but it's just like for me when you're telling me your story, I'm like, oh my god, that sounds like you are abusing your NI so hard, and you're also like a, you know, blast play person, so you're like getting shit done, and you know, you were definitely murdering it in the entrepreneurship world, like you were killing it, right? You know, along with your partner, which I interviewed before, you know, so it makes sense how like, yeah, and then now you're more blissful because you're not doing as much. You're just living in a moment, and happiness for you is in the moment. You know, my girlfriend has NI and she's stressed as fuck all the time. She's an INTJ jumper, right? and like, you know, I always tell, you know, like I'll make her laugh in a moment, and then her thing will go away. You know, she's double feminine like you, right? So it's like, so I can see that I can see you guys getting stuck in that shit, like that double masculine NF sleep, and it's super like toxic. And pretty much the only time you can get away from it is like by not overthinking or doing, like kind of like what you said to Alan earlier, or new experiences, kind of like what Julien did when he went to Nepal or India, you know. You know, living in a moment, experiencing
good
life.
Insight. Yeah, good insight.
So that's just like my perspective. I don't know.
I think that's great, man. And really quick, I want to acknowledge Abby. I think I jumped the gun where I should have listened to what she was saying a little bit more before I replied, by the way. So my bad on that. Now I understand I like double observers because they help with those observations at times. When he explained it, now I'm like, oh, now I get what she's saying. Okay, the ethics. So my bad on that. I just got excited. I'm a blaster. What can I say? I'm a lead blast. I can't freaking help it. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, for me, I think a big part of where my joy is coming from is letting go of the past, the planning in the future, like you're saying, because I think of happiness and bliss as two separate things. I think what I was doing, I didn't realize, guys, I was depressed, missing sleep too. Keep in mind, you guys know functions. So I was depressed deep down, but I was having nothing but happy moments on the surface. So I was planning happy moment after happy moment. I set my life up where it's like, this is going to be the best life ever. I got a vacation here. I got this here, like whatever. Every moment was happy, happy, happy. And it was so confusing when people ask me, are you happy? I'm like, heck yeah, I'm just super happy. But then I was unaware of the deep crap deep down of I was actually depressed. So you can be happy and depressed at the same time. I know that sounds weird, but that was my experience. And so that's where a lot of this came from when I got that awareness. I was trying to look up depression for someone else to help them with something as a cognitive behavioral therapist. A funny irony, I know. And then I was like, all those symptoms sound just like me. And then it was just this like huge like, and then I was like, okay, I'm stopping life. I'm not going to help anyone anymore. And let me go figure my stuff out and then come back. And then maybe come back if I decide to later. But anyways,
it sounded like your tribe life was happy, but your personal emotional life was not.
Yeah, that's a good observation. That sounds right.
That sounds like what.
Well, because I was having endorphins going.
Right.
But it was just so fleeting, you know, and then eventually it stopped working. It's like you hook up with the girl of your dreams or something at this moment. And then it's like, okay, now what? Another one? Now what? You know, it's just like doing that with everything. I abused everything. I did all the pleasures you can find and a lot. And then eventually they just stopped working as much. It's like, I don't know if you guys ever touched a drug, but if you do, it's awesome the first time. But then eventually, not awesome. Okay, there might be kids watching. I'm just saying.
Alan has the king party.
Yeah. I noticed that. But like your endorphins fly a lot the first time, but then they go less and less and less. And that's exactly what I was experiencing with everything. And then my depression actually met with my actions. It's like, you just got, and then I was like, okay, now I'm aware. I need something. Yeah.
You need a dopamine detox or something.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It started that way too, because of the blast play. So I started going on walks all day with no stimulation, no music, no nothing. And that was a big start for me. Yeah.
Cool, man. That's all right, guys. Do you have any final comments before we wrap up this this little panel interview? It got really deep and heavy. I knew I had to bring the FI last because that was gonna bring out some can of worms, and I think that was good. That's exactly what I was looking for. Sounded crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, I just think it was really cool. Thanks for putting it together, Kendrick. And it was really interesting to get to know Abby because I've never met her. And then and her perspectives are, I really like EPs. Like I love EPs. I love your guys' thinking, and it's just dope to see it from the other perspective. You guys are living the opposite life of me. Oh, well, you're TE, so we got some similarities, but you're really interesting to watch. And then Alan, thank you for I really appreciate your double observing. Everything you said was just so well perceived. I don't know what other word to say, but to me, I admire it as a single observer. You just catch on to so many details. Well, you're Century too, but whatever, you got both, you do it all. So I really appreciated seeing that. And so, and then Kendrick, your insights from knowing the code so much were really freaking cool catches. You got some cool stuff. So thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
all right. Thanks for the compliments, Josh. Appreciate that, man. We always have good chats when you guys come around here. I always invite you guys because I love talking to you guys. I know about Josh's stories too, about his other stuff. He told me some of that dopamine stories that he used to do. So yeah. All right, Alan, Abby, do you guys have anything else to say? And then otherwise we'll.
Oh, look, that was a heck of an outro. I'm happy to be upclassed by that one. So thank you.
Of course, man. Yeah. You guys, I like seeing the difference in all you guys. It's so cool because everybody's they have so much value in their own way, and it's just cool to see how everybody, and knowing the functions, it's just freaking really cool to watch you guys. It was fascinating for me. So I had fun.
What I like about Alan, he's like the big reality check guy, like you'll show him your stuff.
Yeah, I love the double masculine, double observing ST. Yeah, I love that combo.
Yeah, I just see Alan going like, well, what you told me sounds good, but I'm afraid I have some bad news. And I'm like, oh, here we go. This is good.
Yeah, I saw you like smiling, like, oh, here we go.
Yeah. This is what I'm looking for, like the bad news.
Well, see, I love that because it gives me an opportunity with being intuitive to really help give clarity of things, because I know my truth, right? And so it's like, I'm never afraid of those things. I kind of want someone to make it more clear. And so I actually really appreciate that a lot. I like keeping people like that around because they help keep me more clear.
Every time I talk to Alan, when I turn off the internet and I'm like finished talking to him, I'm thinking, I'm an idiot,
Well, dude, my wife's an ENTJ, and so she's.
Are you married now? I thought you were just engaged last time.
Oh yeah, no, I just got married. Yeah,
congrats, man.
So, thanks, man. Yeah, we got married a couple months ago. But dude, I see how to me, you guys are one of my favorite. Okay, I click with EPs extremely well. But ENTJs are like my favorite type to watch. She's actually your exact type. She's just a double feminine. Are you guys the exact type? Yeah. Play, consume.
Yeah.
Exact same. She's a double feminine. And she doesn't, maybe because she's double feminine. Well, I don't think you guys realize how much beautiful, brilliant insights you have. It's kind of like Benjamin was saying, he's like, yeah, IPs. He's like, well, we think we're the shiz, but in reality, we're probably not. And then he's like, EJs don't think they're the shiz, but in reality, they kind of are, so it's like, it's kind of interesting because I see this with you and I not with you, but I see it in my wife is like, you guys are so good at so much stuff, but just don't ever seem to really notice or care or give yourself acknowledgement of it. But I think you guys are fascinating type, really, really dope at a lot of things. So it really helps me to be around your type of guys. Yeah. So she's really helped bring the business up big time. Needed her. So All right, that's all the compliments I have for the day. If you want more, you gotta wait till tomorrow. 24-hour rule.
What about you, Abby? Before we wrap it up.
No, thank you for having me. It's I'm struggling to follow that, and my mind is thinking about how hungry I am.
Oh yeah, double activated SF. Yeah. So
Yeah.
all right, guys. Abby has some eating and some video games to play. So we'll call it a day here. So thanks guys for coming again, and we'll stay in touch on Facebook. Take care, guys.
See you guys later.